foot's not moving right, or you have a strength deficiency and you have XYZ is wrong with you and you need to improve those things. But I think, like, what if you just got rid of the pain and then all the function would improve?
What's up, everybody? Before we get into this episode, we have to give a big shout out to all of our sponsors. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. Are you or your athletes waking up too hot or too cold in the middle of the night? Or are you looking for a sleep tracker option that doesn't involve wearing a ring or a wrist or a watch, something on your body? Then you need to look no further than the company SleepMe. SleepMe makes chili pads, which keep your bed cold or warm depending on what you want. And they also have a tracker that will go underneath that pad so it will be able to tell how well you slept. When I did a little study on myself with the Aura Ring and with the SleepMe tracker, they were within 97% of each other, and it was actually pretty astonishing how similar the two were. I love my chili pad. It makes me sleep great. I sleep cold. I actually wake up cold now. I haven't woke up warm. And pretty much ever since I've had it, I don't like sleeping on the road because I don't have the ability to use my chili pad. Bunch of former colleagues back at Towson got it. My stepmother got it. Check it out in the link down below. Hawkin Dynamic is the best option if you're trying to get any force plate data or if you're trying to collect any isometric mid-thigh pulls. Not only can you do isometric mid-thigh pulls for the lower body, but I call it an isometric mid-thigh pull for your upper body, where you're able to do an isometric push-up into something where your back is pushing into a bar and your hands are on the force plate. I utilized Hawkin's force plates and Hawkin's software when I was at Towson. Still utilize it now when I'm at Goldfinch. If you're using the other competitors, I don't know what you're doing. Hawkin's customer service is second to none. Hawkin's software and their hardware, again, second to none. Check them out in the link down below. If you're looking to train your athletes in person or remote, you need to make sure that you're utilizing TeamBuildr. I have had TeamBuildr since 2019 and still utilize it with my remote athletes. This makes everything simple, from the ability to program, have videos right there, wellness questionnaires. Loved being able to have it in person at the rack at Towson, and being able to have it in person now at Goldfinch. This has made my life easier as a coach. If you're still printing on paper, I don't know what you're doing. If you have a different software company, again, I don't know what you're doing. Check out TeamBuildr down in the link below. Are you expanding and need more equipment inside your current room? Or are you building a new weight room and you need to get some equipment? You need to look no further than Powerlift. I had Powerlift equipment when I was at Harvard, Iowa, and at the University of Maryland. I'm currently utilizing their stuff right now. I'm telling you, Powerlift strong, Powerlift made here in America, here in the great state of Iowa, made, manufactured. You have the ability for customization, whether it's on the bench, whether it's on the upholstery, whether it's on the bumpers, across the rack. There are countless options, making sure it's designed to your specific brand. It's Powerlift made, it's Powerlift strong, it's not cheap like all the other competitors, and the people inside of Powerlift are people that you want to be with. Check them out in the link down below.
Yeah, when I first got my first D1 job, was like a month in, I was like, this is it. I had that feeling. I was just like, this sucks. And then I had no way out because I needed the money. I still wanted to think I wanted to move up and make a higher level, stuff like that. And then, yeah, well, many things happened to make me kind of lose the love for it. But yeah, I mean, and now it's just like, I'm just going to specialize in like patellar tendon, or like, I guess, lower limb patellar Achilles. And that's what excites me. I don't care to speak about hypertrophy or vertical jump anymore. It's just boring to me. And I've taken it to a point where I'm think that's good enough for my body of work in the hypertrophy and vertical jumps world. Then I'm checked out now. And let's go to tendons. But I'm hoping tendons last me for like 50 years. Yeah. Hoping it doesn't just go away one day and I'm like, yeah.
What sparked your interest in tendon research?
I think like most people with tendons is their experience with the tendon pain. The experience with the tendon pain that doesn't get better because the PT is not good, or the surgery didn't help, and the return to play process was just bad. And maybe a lot of people go on to rupture again. So like for me, it was just patellar tendon pain, jumper's knee for like. I wanted to walk on for college basketball, and I couldn't play basketball because my patellar tendon was so bad. And I just thought, go the medical route, give it rest, give it PT. Maybe it was a year and a half, 2 years of doing that, and it never got better. And then I got surgery because I thought it was a partial tear. That didn't help. Then I just gave up on basketball. I'm just gonna powerlift and try to get big. And That helped my patellar tendon a lot. And then I got back to playing basketball, but by then it was like kind of late, and I'm like, I like lifting now more than basketball, so I'm just going to be a lifter. So yeah, for me it was the 2 years of like wasted time when I was 19 to 21. 2 years with just a quad that was shrunken and that whole leg was weaker because the rehab for patellar tendon was so poor, and I think it still is today. I think a lot of, if you go to the medical route, they're not, the diagnosis is probably kind of poor. The if they give you PT, like they always do conservative management, wait and see. They give you like a few months of PT. That is usually not going to be very good if you're a basketball like high jumper, someone that puts a lot of stress to your patellar tendon. So yeah, there's just a lot of people that have those experiences, and I don't want to say I'm like, because people project this thing where they say I don't want other people to go through what I went through, and I want, like I'm doing it for the greater good of other people. I'm just like, it's just something that doesn't bore me. It's something that there's so many unknowns, and it's exciting to keep reading about, because I do kind of feel special because of the things that I'm reading. I never see anyone else talking about. You have to like dig pretty deep into the research, and uh, you start to find crazy concepts out there, and then you see them repeated and repeated and repeated, and then it's like, then it becomes this whole foundation of knowledge, and that's kind of what I'm building now. It's just something that's exciting for me. I had a question today. Some dude was like, I posted a thing on the rad Achilles tendon, the rad Achilles tendon, and I kind of, you can see, if you image many modalities of imaging, but you can see a similar looking tendon if you just immobilize an animal versus giving them tendinopathy or giving them like a tendon rupture. If you just immobilize an animal, put them in a cage, the tendon basically looks the same, has the same mechanical structural properties from immobilization than it does from injury. So like they're very similar. Immobilization and overuse are basically like, the tendon's going to look the same. And this dude asked me though, he's like, he's like, you need to say that this is in rats and not in humans, And I agree, but I'm like, come on, bro. Like, do you think I really am coming to this conclusion based off of one little video of one study? I'm not. I'm coming from years of reading this and seeing the similarities across the board. So when a guy says, give me the study, I'm like, I can't give you the study. I would have to give you like this study, which then builds on this study, which then builds on this study. And now we're 50 studies in and you haven't even clicked on a single link. I'm not going to waste my time. So I'm like, I think that's the point you get to, where it's like, once you start to see things and you start to build on one another, you can't just cite one study and say, here's what I saw. And that's kind of the point I'm getting to. So it's like with humans, it's going to be the same thing. It's just hard to get that type of imaging and that type of research on humans because we don't immobilize and we don't kill humans and then look at their tendons, and we don't do tendon biopsies because they wreck the tendon for like a few years. So yeah, many limitations.
But the thing that kills me is when there's people like you talking about it, but you're also citing research from, Ebony Rio, Keith Barr, the other people that you've had on the show, and that like, so there's more and more research talking about it, and we have Kyle Salmons on the show talking about it this week. Like, how is that still the model in the medical world? Like, what is the thing that's slowing that down where we can help more people?
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I think you said Ebony. Ebony said it pretty good on a few shows. She was like, when you get a muscle injury, we know the time frame. Like, you muscle strain, okay, 4 weeks of rest and graded exposure, or whatever it is, depending on the grade. And then you get a bone, you break a bone, put it in the cast, you got X amount of time. But someone hurts their tendon, it's like, we don't have a time frame. We don't know what to do. So I think that's where it is. There's no concrete time frame, and there's no concrete rehab plan. But there is for muscle and there is for bone. There's just not for tendon. There's no like foundational. They're kind of getting created now. There's with the muscle. There's some foundational concepts of how to go about the graded exposure. Same thing with bone. Although bone is pretty simple. Just let the thing come back together and then do just graded exposure of the sport. But with a tendon is like, what is the graded exposure? And it's really based off of the speed, because if you can go with a kind of a painful tendon, do isometrics or do slow heavy lifting, and that's really not going to provoke. It shouldn't provoke the tendon too much. But then once you go and do the fast things, that's where it can start to get provoked. So it's like I think that it's kind of getting created and well accepted that it's like, okay, your tendon hurts, you're in tendon pain, remove the thing that hurts, and let's go and do the slow heavy loads. As those get better, as your function improves, then we start to build in the graded exposure of those type of loads. But it's I mean, even me talking about it, there's nothing concrete about it. You can do it a million different ways, and no one's going to hold people back when you got a tendon pain. The coach, you can't go up to a coach and say we have to take 4 weeks off from a tendon pain, because the athlete. I think the thing is the athlete can play. When you have a tendon pain, it can warm up and you can play. So a coach might just be like, well, I think they're just soft. I think they're just soft. They need to play through it. If you have a broken bone, how many guys are going to play through a broken bone? And the implications of playing through a broken bone, you could make it worse. There's so many more factual things with other injuries with muscles and bones than there are with tendons. And I think that's why when someone does get a tendon pain, we're just like, you can't give specific answers.
You think it's because we're looking at it with tendon pain versus like an ankle sprain, like a muscular sprain and a bone bruise? Because like, okay, a ruptured tendon and a broken bone and a torn muscle, like I think a coach would understand that. But if we're talking like, a strained muscle and a strain, because you're right, like you could have a strained tendon and still play, versus how likely you have a hamstring strain or a muscular strain and still play. So that's that gray area where it's kind of like the bone bruise, but again, tendon is muscle and bone connecting. So it's like hearing you talk, like, all right, is it a little bit of both? Like you take the two theories and put them together and divide it by two, because the two things, and it's the two entities of the heavier you lift, the more the obviously the strength is going to get there, but you're not doing the elastic training to it, so it's not going to get stiff there. Is that the answer? Like, how is it?
Yeah. That's too difficult of a question. I think it's so the question, sorry, can you repeat it?
I mean, I guess it's like, look, if we're saying that an ankle, let's say a hamstring strain's 14 to 28 days, right? Low end 14. And then a bone bruise, you might have to sit out of practice 2 to 3 days. Cause like, I'm thinking football. We had a guy have a quad contusion because he was a running back that took an outside linebacker's helmet or shoulder pad right to his thigh. I mean, that thing was nasty, right? And coaches want to be like, oh, it's a bruise, it's a bruise. Bro, that shit's purple. It looks disgusting. He can't even fricking touch it with like, so yes, he doesn't need 14 to 28 days. He might need 2 to 6, right? So it's like, do you then take those two theories of like, okay, a hamstring strain, 14 to 28, bone bruise, 2 to 5. All right, on the low end, 2 and 14. In the middle of it is 7 or 8. It's like, all right.
Yeah, okay, that's what you're saying, yeah.
7 to 8 days rest for tendon pain. Great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm making this shit up.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you're just doing what would be like the logical step, because you're like, it's just the interface between a muscle and a bone. So it's like, it should be the rehab should be
between the two, right?
Yeah, the rehab should be in the middle, but that is not the case, and it's so variable. It's like it is so variable. You could have someone with pretty bad tendon pain, and then I don't know, you give them 2 days of rest, and they don't have tendon pain again for the rest of their life. You give them 2 days of taking it easy, no tendon pain the rest of their life. You get someone with tendon pain, and it doesn't, like, it could last for months. It could last for years. So it's like there is no specific time frame. And I think the probably part of it too is like when you get those bone issues, you can image them. You just get an X-ray. You can kind of see the can you X-ray a bone bruise? Probably not. You got to do some other thing for a bone bruise. But anyways, when you break or you fracture something, is like you could get an X-ray and then you get the time frame of like what you need to do. With a muscle, you don't really need imaging for a muscle, but it's like it's so sensitive to a muscle will kind of tell you like immediately if what you're doing is good or bad, and you can kind of go based off of that. The tendon is like you can't really image unless it's a full rupture. You can't image and say your tendon is 60% degenerative, so you should have bad pain, and this athlete, you're only 10% degenerative, you should have less bad pain. That's not the case. It doesn't matter. The level of structural pathology with your tendon does not line up with the pain. So you can't image a tendon and say you're looking like you're 60% degenerative. We need to take 6 months off. You can't say that because that person with 60% degenerative could be fine in 2 days. They could just not have pain. And then so you can't image. So like imaging's off the table for like telling you the time frame. And then it's also so variable like that. And I think one thing that can kind of give some guiding of that is the Jill Cook, Craig Purdom put out the tendinopathy continuum, where if you have a normal tendon, and then they say when you overload it, it gets you reactive. So it just swells with water because you've done too much. And it's like red and hot. It's a really sensitive tendon. You don't really want to load it. If you just take it easy for like a few days, maybe a few weeks, the reactive tendon goes away, and then you can get back to normal training. You don't need to do any elaborate loading scheme or anything like that. But when you have the reactive tendon and you keep pushing through, that's when it starts to tap into the collagen and gets degenerative. And then once it gets degenerative, you can run into a tendon pain that lasts you for weeks, months, years. So I'm convinced that most athletes, like football, basketball, have had a tendon pain in their life, patellar Achilles, and they just did what anyone else does: is they rest a little bit and it goes away, and they never think of it again. It's those people that get it, and maybe they don't do the right thing in the first place. They keep pushing through. That then you take the reactive tendon, you keep aggravating the reactive tendon, and now it becomes a chronic thing. So it's like you have the time frames of normal tendon, acute tendon pain, chronic tendon pain. And the acute tendons, you can treat them by let's just take it easy, like the wait and see approach, which usually works. That usually is money for people. Just wait and see. Oh, your patellar tendon hurts, your Achilles tendon hurts. Let's take a little bit easy. But if you ask the history and they're like, yeah, I've been dealing with this for a few weeks or a few months, wait and see is not gonna do the trick. You got to change some things. So I think you got to bucket those things of like, you got the normal tendon, you got the acute tendon, and then you got the chronic tendon. And the chronic tendon needs pretty much daily care for you to figure out how does it feel today, what does the function look like on that leg compared to the other leg, how can we progress you back to sport, all those things.
Now, do you think it matters between Achilles versus patella tendon on that pain? Because it's like, all right, Achilles, that might hurt when you walk, let alone jump. But if you have knee pain, maybe it cricks going up and down stairs and hurts. But for me personally, maybe I haven't had bad patellar tendon pain. I had some Achilles pain in my left heel for like, it was almost debilitating. And that was just awful. Same thing though. I could warm it up. I could get through it. And so my question is like, all right, do you think the location matters because you could grit through it, whatever you want to say, in normal daily life if it's not as painful outside of athletics? Does that matter or no?
I think the Achilles, like, yeah, it'll hurt when you're walking and then it kind of warm up. But the patellar kind of sucks too, because if you sit on a bus or sit in a car for a long time, sit in a plane, your patellar tendon will blow up if your patellar tendon is painful. If you stand, if you have a job where you got to stand for 8 hours, your patellar tendon will get really stiff. Walking upstairs, bending your knee at all is going to be pretty difficult. So like, I don't think those differences matter too much. The thing that's different with the Achilles there is like, one thing people with Achilles that like is really chronic and they really got to like take care of everything is looking at walking volume. Because like if you walk too much, that could actually set off your Achilles. So you could do the perfect rehab plan with the calf raises and the isos and the progression of all that stuff, and then you just happen to go walk an extra 2 miles. That could set off your Achilles. So that's one thing versus like the patellar tendon. You're not really going to set it out. Like walking doesn't do too much to the patellar tendon. So the patellar tendon is pretty easy to manage in that sense because you're only really going to set it off from like the things that load it a lot, which are the jumping, landing, change of direction, XL, decel, like those type of things really stress the patellar tendon. Versus Achilles, you go for a walk, you're yanking on the Achilles quite a bit. Did you have a insertional or was it mid portion? Do you know?
No, mine was insertional, and it was like I said, bottom. Like I could almost point to it. I went down a rabbit hole, bro. Like this went back to 2012 when I was working at Maryland at College Park. It came like it never really ever went away. I thought I had a heel spur. Like I looked into the fact, like I remember Kittle had a little cleanup done with it when we were at Iowa together because I'm like, man, maybe that's what I need to do. Like it stuck with me for the longest time, and then I dove into like foot biomechanics, like rear foot here, hidden forefoot, rear foot, how it moves, how it interacts on the ground, and my walking on pushing off of my big toe. Like it was, oh fuck, I went down
Yeah.
a rabbit hole.
Dude, the crazy thing is, tendon, tendon pain. You have tendon pain, and then you have function. So like, there's two things: tendon pain, and then you have just function of the limb. Which like what you were looking at was like the biomechanics, and you're trying to like improve the function of the limb to reverse engineer to get rid of the pain. And I would agree with that. I'm like, we should usually look at function because if you try to do modalities to decrease pain, you're going to end up, if you have Achilles tendon, you're just going to end up laying in bed all day because that doesn't hurt your Achilles, you know? So I'm like, you take it the far extreme in that sense. But I also think there's a lot of truth to that because we focus so much on function of like, okay, my Achilles hurts. Let's look at how the biomechanics of the foot's work and maybe do some calf raises, strengthen all the associated everything, whatever. And you start to think that your foot's not moving right, or you have a strength deficiency and you have XYZ is wrong with you and you need to improve those things. But I think like, what if you just got rid of the pain and then all the function would improve?
You need CEUs to remain certified. At Strength Coach Network, both of our long form education courses, Fundamentals 1 and Fundamentals 2, both have 2.0 CEUs to the NSCA in Category C. When you complete the learning and you complete the learning check, you will earn your 2.0 CEUs. That is 33% of the CEUs you need in a 3-year reporting period. Click the link down below to learn more about both courses.
Could that also be a thing? And with the I ask insertional and mid portion because there's some pretty good research on people with insertional. If they wear heel inserts, like heel wedges, the results are like comparable to getting on a long-term loading program. Just putting heel inserts in if you have insertional, because insertional gets when you get into dorsiflexion, it compresses on the calcaneus. So I think the idea there is just get rid of the compression. I mean, get rid of the pull, a little bit excess pull on the tendon, a little bit excess compression. Get rid of it by getting in and it's a pretty elevated heel insert. You wear those and like you just let the tendon go about its healing process. You let the pain go away, and then you still need to use common sense when it does go away because you can't just jump right back into let's go. Yeah, So I'm like, that's I think that's one where the big issue comes. But I'm like, the tendon will heal. You just got to let it go about its process. And when it's almost for us, our knowledge hurts us because you dig so deep into biomechanics and strength deficiencies and the perfect way to hit everything. And I'm like, the body is pretty perfect that it's going to heal the tendon. Just get out of the tendon's way. Just get out of its way. Let it happen. It's probably just not going to happen in the time frame you want it to happen.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like that, yeah. Therein lies the issue because it's not on the time frame that we want it to happen.
Yep, I know. So you're trying to accelerate things, which is still fun. But I like to entertain. Like the thing I do is we were saying before we got on about the knowledge, like the knowledge I have in the tendon domain. I don't take any of it seriously because there's so little. I realize there's so little that I know, and I love entertaining the paradoxes of like, I'm such a big guy and load the sucker, load the tendon. But I'm also like, what if you just decrease the pain by putting the heel insert in? Or there's nitroglycerin patches too that people never made any money off of. So PRP is a thing that's huge in the tendon world. And PRP is huge because they make so much money off of it. The nitroglycerin patches are pretty effective in maybe 20% of cases, how like they can kind of knock out, I think, some Achilles pain, some rotator cuff pain. There's only been a few studies. But the problem with no one knows what nitroglycerin patches was no one made money off of them. So
anybody that's listening right now, they're like, all right, what's he talking about?
So I think it's just a patch you put on your skin and it increases nitric oxide to the area. So this is again one of the paradoxes I live in where I'm like, the tendon is a structure that doesn't get a lot of blood flow. It does not need a lot of blood flow. When you get injured, you increase blood flow, just like you do with any tissue. When you're an athlete, you have increased blood flow in your tendon because you're using it a lot more. And I'm like, one of the things when you do go down deep into tendon pain, you start to get nerves come in, more blood vessels come in, so you actually have increased blood flow. So then when we take an athlete with tendon pain, we're like, let's rehab by increasing blood flow, because it's a big thing with like knees over toes, do backward sled, get blood flow to the tendon. And I'm like, dude, that doesn't matter. You could just go, you could do anything in the world that loads your knee and you're going to get blood flow to the tendon. You don't need to do a specific exercise for blood flow. Blood flow is unimportant. It does not matter for tendon rehab. So this is the paradox though. Then you go to the nitroglycerin patches, which like part of it is increasing blood flow, increasing nitric oxide, and people get better pain relief. So I'm like, that's one of the paradoxes I live in, where I'm like, I don't like doing things specifically for blood flow, but then there's this nitroglycerin patch that does increase blood flow, that does help. I think it was 20% of people saw like really good results with those patches. So, yeah.
So what if anybody's like, all right, hey, I feel better. Is it analgesic? Is it anecdotal when somebody's like, all right, if they use foam roll massage, if they use a kettlebell on the quad or the calf, or they do Donnie Thompson,
Yeah.
like what those
Yeah.
things that people say it feels better. Is there not enough like actual fMRI or any imaging done to see the long-term result? Because if they're thinking the same thing, like it increases blood flow and it helps with the pain, is that
Okay.
what?
Yeah. You know, I don't care. Yeah. I'm just hating on the mechanistic explanation when you say you have tendon pain, let's increase blood flow, and I'm like, you don't need to do that. But if you're doing backward sled or you're doing foam rolling, there's many other mechanisms outside of blood flow that are helping. So I'm like, if something makes you feel better, 100% go and do it. But it makes you feel better when something makes you feel better. No one leaves it at that. They should just leave it at that. When something makes you feel better, they always want to explain the mechanism, and 99% of the time, they're probably wrong.
That's a good point. Like, hey, maybe it just made it feel better.
Exactly. So that's kind of where I thought you were asking something on you weren't, but Jill Cook said I re-listened to a lot of podcasts. Jill Cook is like, I take her for granted. She's been in the field for so long, and the things that she's went through, like she got a Achilles biopsy like 15, 20 years ago, Achilles tendon biopsy. I was looking into it, and she was on Twitter. She was saying it gave her pain for like 18 months or 2 years or something. And she's like, they don't really do biopsies anymore because of that. It really like what's it called?
Incapacitates her.
Yeah, is that the term? Yeah. But she said recently she's not a fan of doing like massage to the tendon or doing injections to the tendon. And I would kind of agree with that. But she's like, if you want to talk about the associated muscle, do whatever you want. You can do dry needling, you can do foam rolling, you can do the Donnie Thompson thing, you can do whatever in the world for the associated muscle. Go ahead and do it. But if you want to start poking at the tendon and start like injecting things in the tendon, that's kind of where I'm like, and I would agree with her. It's just, I loved her distinction. It really just brought home for me. I'm like, that's exactly what I would say for people. Because I'm a big fan of stretching. If you want to stretch your quad because you think that's causing your patellar tendon pain, go and stretch your quad. If you want to foam roll your quads too, or you want to get like dry needling done on your because your vastus lateralis outside quad can tend to like take over. You want to do all the stuff you want in the world to that stuff, go ahead. But if you want to start poking in the tendon and getting like PRP injections and stuff like that, just I go to the far extreme of the tendon biopsy. And I'm like, when someone gets a tendon biopsy, it wrecks their tendon for many months, maybe many years. And you're doing a small insult, like you're not necessarily doing that because you're not taking the tissue out, and the biopsy thing is pretty huge. But when you start to inject like a needle in there, I'm like, you're kind of doing something where you're puncturing the outside of the tendon. You're going into the tendon around. You're going into the collagen, or maybe you're going into the IFM. I don't think you're doing good things by poking a needle into the tendon. And I think it depends on size. Because like dry needling tendons are very tiny. I don't think those actually cause too much harm. But I just think
some of those things are like this.
With the dry needling ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe it depends on the practitioner, but
on the practitioner, because those things come in different lengths. I had an issue on my C5, C6 disc bulge that shut down pressing on my right arm, and C6, C7 that shut down pulling on my left. and I had some dry needling done, and them suckers were long, boy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
holy
I
cow.
think I'm getting at the diameter. The
Oh,
diameter
gotcha.
is tiny.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Because if it's a
Diameter's
small,
tiny. Yes.
yeah, yeah, it's a small diameter. I don't think the length really matters because, yeah. And if you start to go into the PRP injections, like I just see across the board such bad practices being used. If you're going to get PRP, they should. I think there's a way to look at the concentration of the platelets and figure out how to get more that's going to be beneficial for, or more or less that's going to be more beneficial for a tendon compared to some other structure of your body. So they should do that, and I think they should be doing that. But the second thing is like they should be using ultrasound guidance to get it in the right spot. And I have so many kids that tell me they got a PRP and they just stuck it in. Like they don't even know the area they're going for. Yeah, they don't even know the area they're going for. And I'm like, I think this is again the mechanistic explanation where it can kind of be wrong because I'm like, I think sometimes if you just poke a tendon, like you just poke a hole in a tendon, and then someone has to rest a little bit, something happens where it could actually lead to positive outcomes. It could decrease pain. It could lead to something. I don't know the reason, but if you're just poking the tendon without knowing with the PRP shot, knowing the exact location, it's not because you've hit the area of degeneration and it's now healed itself. I think it's some other reason you've poked a hole in the tendon. And Keith Bard explained this on Joel Smith's podcast recently, and I don't I need to re-listen and clear that up. But he was kind of talking about the stress relaxation, how you kind of poke enough holes in the tendon and the whole thing starts to just. It didn't make too much sense to me, but the whole thing kind of shields itself. And I think when you have something like that, that could actually, for some reason, lead to positive outcomes for a person. Many
The
unknowns, many unknowns.
Well, when you essentially talked about the same thing, like pain site, and then go up and downstream. Just don't bother the tendon, but attack the muscle that is pulling on aforementioned tendon. So your quad, okay, if it's tight, taut, pulling in whatever direction, causing undue stress on your tendon, that makes sense. Same thing, like okay, go above and below. So if it's maybe do a little bit of work on your posterior tib because maybe it makes it feel better and it stops pulling on it. But that again, going and leaving the tendon alone, that's kind of what I was going after when I said that, because those are some things, man, like when I would massage my calf, even like very up high, almost behind my kneecap, that tendon pain would go away. And it felt, I'm like, oh my God, like I would do anything to, like you said, make that tendon pain just go away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird thing. Some people want to start poking it. Some people want to really like their tendon hurts, and you see them rubbing their tendon all the time. And I don't know the obsession with that. I don't think I ever got into that. I was more about icing and putting heat on it and stuff like that. Which I don't think icing and heat has any pro or con to it. I think if people want to do it, go ahead. It's when you start poking the thing and when you start putting tools on it, trying to rub. Like they'll do Graston to rub the tendon and say that it increases collagen synthesis or something. And I'm like,
What?
yeah,
Who
I'm
the
like,
hell said that?
I, did they? Yeah, that. I've heard it repeated many
But you have to
times.
actually be doing something to orientate the collagen fiber and the matrix the way you want it.
Exactly. So it's like it's just something people say, and I'm like, I ain't gonna argue. Just go ahead. But I'm like, when they're rubbing the thing, like okay, Achilles and patellar. If you rub the surface, if you look at the area where, and kind of when you have an injury, the whole tendon is affected. But when they say we're trying to kind of break up scar tissue or something like that, it's like the area that is pathological is the underside of the patellar tendon, the posterior side. You're not rubbing that when you're rubbing the surface of the skin. Same
Correct.
with the Achilles. It's like it's not going to be on the surface. It's always going to be it's not going to be superficial. It's going to be the deep part. So you can't get that when you start rubbing your finger on it or you start rubbing tools on it. You're not even touching that area. You're just touching the outside and you're just aggravating it. And that's one thing where like if you cause acute pain to an area, sometimes the chronic pain decreases. So I'm like, sometimes that could be the pain relief by doing those type of things. It's again, if it makes you feel better and it's not doing harm, I think sometimes if you're doing the tools, it could actually do some harm. If you're doing your finger, it's really not that much harm. Just don't try to explain the mechanism because you're probably going to be wrong. Just leave it at I feel better.
What about so hearing you say that made me think of an analogy I told an athlete before is like, listen, if it's aggravated, it might be like you said, a sunburn. If you're continually rubbing a sunburn, like unfortunately, you gotta just let the body heal sometimes. And yeah, like that's part of the reason why you might have to miss practice. You might have to miss a game, and that's the part that we don't want to hear.
Yeah, that's the tough part. And yeah, I am a fan. I am a fan of like you said. You had that Kyle. What's Kyle? I listened to one of his
Kyle
podcasts.
Samuels. Yeah,
Yeah,
Kyle
I listened to one of his yesterday actually on the Achilles with some other guy, and he's talking about his. He probably covered it on yours how he got some guys back like pretty quick after
he
Achilles
was saying
rupture.
like 5 months. So
Yeah,
five,
so I'm
six.
like that's really cool because I do think the time frames are limiting when you go the medical route and you just listen to doctors and surgeons how they're like we need 9 months or we need 12 months before you're fully back. It's like I am a fan of trying to push things, but I also play the other side of like what has all the research showed us on what the tendon healing process is, and I think you have to obey that. But I do think it does happen in those like in like what was it 6 months. I think it does happen in that time frame 4 5 6 months. It's just I think acutely matters the most when you have an acute rupture and then you get the repair is like it's not right after the repair. It's actually super weak. I think a week or 2 or 3 weeks after it's very weak at those type of time frames. So it's like um we're kind of pushing towards early loading now with tendons, and I think that's definitely a good thing um because I think the quicker you can get some load through that thing. It's not really proven yet with research in humans because they've done some pretty recent studies actually of like early exercise versus early immobilization after rupture, and they saw like pretty similar changes or pretty similar gains later down the line. But it just makes sense that this is a structure that is really dumb and it only is affected by the muscle and the muscle and the bone. So like you got to do something to start pulling on that tendon to get it to reorient and get healthy again. If you just rest it, put it in a boot, sure it's going about its healing process, but I think you got to start getting some load through it, and probably the sooner the better. I think that's where everyone's headed is the sooner the better. And the fear is always re-rupture. And
Right
I'm sure you're going to get people that get out of surgery and they want to start doing ISOs afterwards and they re-rupture. I'm sure that's gonna happen.
now, does it matter? Not immediately post, but for you, are you saying yielding, overcoming? Which end of the spectrum would you say that you fall? Or are you somewhere in the middle?
As far as right after,
No,
or just
just in
in
terms
general.
of
Oh,
better, generalistic. Is it yielding?
yeah,
Is it overcoming? Is it overly weighted? Is it extreme 5 minutes? What and where in the continuum do you lie?
yeah. Someone sent me a graph the other day. I think it was, I don't know where he got it. It had like 8 different sets, time frames, percentages based on what you want to get out of the tendon with isometrics. And I am naturally somewhat so against that. Like this is so complicated and complex. I hate it. So my thing, what I always repeat is like 3 to 5 sets, 30 to 45 seconds of an isometric. If it's a patellar tendon, just pick an exercise that loads your quad to the best degree possible, isolates the quad. So usually for me, that's a leg extension. You get on a leg extension, you get to the mid range because the muscle is going to be the strongest at mid range. If you go too high, it's not really pulling that well. If you go too deep, it can't pull that well. So get mid range, like 60-degree knee angle, and you just hold 3 to 5 sets, 30 to 45 seconds, as heavy as you can possibly tolerate, where you feel your quadricep getting a huge burn, not too much discomfort in your patellar tendon, and you just progress from there. Achilles tendon, probably the same thing, like mid range type isos. Because you can get your calf to work really well. I think you should do like standing is good because it hits gastroc and soleus. Seated will just hit soleus because the gastroc can't do too much. And I think they both have benefit, both seated and standing, because people will say you'll hit both soleus and gastroc with standing, but I think you hit the soleus different with seated. Like
Yeah, you could.
it's just
That'd be like the same person that's saying like, "Oh, are you going to do your leg extension if you're in full hip flexion, or if you're in, or if you have some hip extension and you're kind of leaning back and you have no, rectus is kind of,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I mean, come on now, people. Like,
Yeah,
are
yeah,
we
yeah.
majoring in the minor? Can we just do the
Yeah.
thing?
So for me, I'm just that's pretty much what I say. Someone is in tendon pain, 3 to 5 sets, 30 to 45 seconds. A load of that is as heavy as you can possibly manage
Single or
without
double leg?
like always single because I mean you're just gonna get side to side differences, and you really if you do double leg, your body is just so good at compensating away from the injured side. So you need to train both sides individually. And then I think when you have a healthy athlete, when you have a healthy athlete, this is really like I've went back and forth for like many months on this. I'm like, there's, I think it's 5 to 10 seconds. There would be like an overcoming, right? Like a 5 to 10 second ISO. You could do just an overcoming ISO, and I think it's similar benefits to the tendon with a healthy athlete. Overcoming ISO 5 to 10 seconds. The thing is, for me, I'm just like, you never, for me and for anyone else, you never know that the level of pathology within your tendon. And when you're doing an isometric, that's like the way I'm suggesting 30, 45 seconds. A part of it is you're trying to reorient the whole tendon and kind of fill in the hole. And that's going to happen with the 30 to 45 second. With the 5 to 10 second, I don't think it's enough time to get that to happen. So when you have that distinction of like a normal person, you can get away with just doing 5 to 10 second overcoming ISOs for like tendon strength, tendon stiffness. An unhealthy athlete, you should stick to the more yielding 30 to 45 second. I just think like if you're a basketball, football player, like, or anyone, and you're like 18 plus, you probably have pathology within your tendons that you're using a lot. So I'm just a fan of doing the 30 to 45 seconds. But yeah, I think there is use with that. Man, the thing that's recently is like, you never know, like when someone goes on to get a patellar or Achilles tendon, and it's always that, they say insidious onset, where it kind of just creeps on, just comes on, and you're like, oh, now it hurts, and then it hurts for many weeks or many months. By the time you've had that patellar tendon or that Achilles tendon, there have been signs that that's coming for probably many months prior, for probably like a year prior, or like 15, I don't know, many months prior. The thing is, we just don't know how to predict. We just don't know how to know that that's coming up. But there are signs. There are signs with increased blood flow is one of them. Increased turnover of the tendon. All these things are already happening in someone that is quote unquote 100% healthy because they have no pain, and they're just a recipe to go on and develop tendon pain, or potentially go and get a tendon rupture. The thing is, you just don't know, and I think this is coming down the line. The UTC scans are something where, I don't know if you talk to anyone that's doing that regularly. Some like D1 programs that have money, or some pro organizations, they'll do frequent UTC scans on patellar. Patellar is kind of difficult to do, but they'll do it on Achilles, and they'll do it maybe every few weeks, so you can see, and they color code it for the meatheads that are not that good at, like, like, I don't know how to read an ultrasound, but if you put colors on,
read good.
Yeah, if you put colors on it, I know what it is. So, all right, I know what to make of it, I guess. So yeah, they'll do frequent scans because you have to do them frequently to see the environment of the tendon, and you can start to see if someone is creeping down of like so much swelling from overload, or starting to get some degeneration, and then you can probably make training decisions based off of that. I just think it's probably many months, many years down the line. But this is pretty exciting, how you could start to predict if someone's going to get a tendon pain, or you could even predict if someone's might go on to rupture their tendon. I think it's very cool. It's just like, once you start to get into it, people start to put things out, you're definitely going to see that it's probably way more muddy than the excitement that I have for it. But
yeah, no, 'cause I was hearing that, I was like, Jesus, did we just get GPS for body parts, and now like
and the big, like, patellar, even they have a scanner, so it's supposed to be like, not, because one of the problems with an ultrasound is the person doing it, the skill of the person doing it. Because like, if you did an ultrasound on me and then I get a doctor do it, or I get 10 different doctors, I'm going to get 10 different diagnoses of what's going on in my tendon. So you need to have one person doing it, and then do it frequently, so they can know what it is. They have the same skill level. With the UTC scan, it's kind of I guess you still have to do it by hand, but it's more motorized, or it's more like they do it on horses. There's some videos on horses where they attach it to the leg, and it actually automatically will go down and look at the tendon. So it's like, that doesn't require the user. And yeah, it is pretty exciting. The thing is, you're going to see people, like, I've heard stories of guys doing scans on people, and they'll have like a tear through the, like, usually you'd think a tendon is like this and a tear is here, but this guy tear like this.
Ooh.
And
looking to expand your education further, but you don't want to pay the massive fees of going back to school? At Strength Coach Network, we have 2 long form education courses that both cost less than one course taught to you by an online school. If you click down below to learn more about Fundamentals 1 or Fundamentals 2, you will be able to sign up for our education course that has over 20 hours of educational content brought to you by some of the biggest names in the field: Dr. Brian Mann, Zach Daycant, Jeff Moyer, Terrence Kennel, and many more inside of this course, all for less than the price of one course at a college university.
No pain, dude's fine. So it's like, yeah. So again, it's muddy because you start to think like, oh my gosh, this guy's tendon looks awful. It's like, how's your like your tendon feel fine? And he'll be like, oh, I feel like $1,000,000. What are you talking about? And then you got a guy that like their scan looks perfectly normal, and they're like, I can't even jump without bad pain. So we're pretty far down the line of like associating structure with pain or structure with but it's like, I think when you take someone, you look at their structure day one, and then you look at it a week later, whatever, you can start to see changes. And I think that's what matters. Is what's changing within their individual tendon.
So hearing you talk, anybody that's listened thus far, they're like, all right, how can this guy say he doesn't know anything about tendons slash there's so much unknown? Because it does seem like you're giving general parameters. What things do you feel like you don't know enough about that you want to keep learning about with respect to tendon?
Oh man, the big thing recently is like, why did these Achilles rupture in the NFL? Why did these guys blow their Achilles? Like, that's been fascinating.
What'd you find?
Nothing. There's no answer. Like
Exactly.
you got it's just not. Yeah, that would be so.
At
You say
least
like
you're not
what's
trying to say, come train with me and then this won't happen. Like,
I know, and actually that could be a pretty easy thing to do because Achilles ruptures are extremely rare. So I could just train a few good athletes and be like, I've never had an Achilles rupture before. Actually, I could tell you that in my years of training, I've never had an Achilles rupture. I've had a few like ACL tears, and maybe I should start coining that. Huh? I've never trained an athlete that's went on to rupture their patella or Achilles. Yeah, but that's what's exciting for me. And there's many other things. Like, that's what's exciting for me is like, why do people go to rupture and why do people get tendon pains? And then there's like 100 different avenues I'm going down. Like, one of the big ones within the last year is the circadian rhythm of tendons, is how they and you get this a lot in mice. The problem with mice is they have a opposite, so they're nocturnal. So like for them, I don't know how to associate that completely. This is why I'm working on getting all these researchers on my podcast. The problem is researchers are so difficult to get a hold of, and even willing to do a podcast, because they're not like us, how we benefit from doing a podcast. For them, they're in their lab, and what do they benefit from doing a podcast unless they trying to have a social media presence? But the mice, they'll build up their tendon to get bigger to prepare for the day, and then at night they have this cleaning process. So it's like a 12-hour building phase where your tendon gets bigger and stronger, and then a 12-hour cleanup phase where your tendon cleans up the damage. Like because every day you're building up the collagen, but then you're also breaking a lot of collagen, and you need to clean up the collagen, or your tendon's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's like, I guess that would be like fibrosis, how you just have a tissue that accumulates so much collagen. That's not what you'd want in a tendon. So part of the circadian rhythm, and this is going back to the biopsy, they actually did patellar tendon biopsies on these people. It's comical though. They did patellar tendon biopsies on these people. They saw that the healthy people had a normal circadian rhythm, like a robust circadian rhythm of 12 hours of cleaning, 12 hours of building. And the people that had patellar tendon pain, they did not get the cleaning phase. So it's like they weren't really cleaning up their tendons. This it's called matrix MMPs. I don't know how to pronounce it. MMP is a thing that cleans up the collagen, like cleans it up, takes it out of the system. This one MMP 13, I think it is like downregulated. It's not seen in people with tendinopathy, or it's not really doing its job. So when people have tendinopathy, it's like the cleanup process is not working that well. And we think consume more collagen, build it up stronger. And I'm like, maybe it's actually a cleanup process that we're missing. And again, this is just a time thing. Just give it enough time, let it go about its processes. And but with her, she did the tendon biopsies. Chloe Young and some other researchers, they did tendon biopsies. And then on Twitter, she was like, someone was criticizing it somehow. And she's like, yeah, that's part of the problem. We need to figure out how we can get more frequent patellar tendon biopsies. And I was just thinking, you probably can't get frequent tendon biopsies on the people because you wrecked their tendons by doing a patellar tendon biopsy in the first place. And who wants to keep getting? They're gonna be like, I'm gonna get 6 patellar tendon biopsies. You're never gonna be able to walk again in your life. It's like no one's gonna sign up for that. Yeah, but that's one thing I'm getting into, and then it's the circadian rhythm, and then it's on. Michael Kerr has some work on when you're mature, 95% of the tendon is stable, 95% of it is not turning over, and then 5% of it is the circadian rhythm part of the tendon where it's actually building up and cleaning up every day. So most of your tendon is static and it's just sitting there and not doing anything for the rest of life. It's just kind of supporting load. But then you have this 5% that they call the sacrificial pool, where it builds up and cleans up. It builds up and then cleans itself every day. And work by Katja Hennemeyer. She did work back in the day. She's looking at people that go on to get tendon pain, probably tendon rupture. That 95 to 5% changes to like a 50-50%. So your entire tendon is way more active in the people that have tendinopathy, which is kind of a good thing to me, because I'm like, I was thinking, okay, if you got 95% of that's stable, and I'm doing all this training and stuff, try to get healthy, am I only affecting the 5%? That doesn't make any sense. But it's like, okay, once you go on to get tendinopathy, or you're down that path to develop tendinopathy or develop tendon rupture, that person has a tendon that is way more dynamic, way more active. And I think that's a good thing, because then, at least for me to conceptualize, because that means my whole tendon is going to respond much more easily to what I'm doing. Yeah, it's so much speculation, man. Like, in a few months, I might listen back and be like, yeah, that's wrong. But that's why it's fun. It's really fun. And I think I love looking into the research and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's like so many athletes that that I've worked with through like my stuff I release online, through consults, through following my programs, that reach out, and the results that they get from it are very good. And I could just leave it at that, because the program is solid. I don't need to change that thing ever. The things I'm digging into are just for my own entertainment, because I get bored so easily. And if I can have a little bit creative, a little bit different way to look at my patellar tendon while I'm rehabbing it, it keeps me engaged. It keeps me engaged to think that I'm going to go, oh, it's the 12-hour cleaning phase. Whether that's whether that's completely false, completely made up, I don't care. It's making me excited about my patellar tendon rehab, and I'm trying to placebo myself and everyone else into just relieving their tendon pains. Give me as much placebo as possible.
Well, with the nutrition stuff that you talked about versus the cleanup, what if people could do the proper nutrition and do the cleanup in the proper way? Like, actually taking the collagen and having the vitamin C and dosing it that right way, and then getting excited about the cleanup like you talk about.
Yeah. I'm not going against collagen supplementation and vitamin C. I'm just like, I love the paradox of, I'm a fan of consume collagen because it's a good.
People will do it, and then they'll just like, they won't let you rest, because it's like, oh, you had collagen and vitamin C, like now you're good to go. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah. And I think it really needs. Yeah, man, that's an interesting point. I think it really needs that time frame. And I guess most people are just going to bed for 8 hours. They're just laying in bed they're sleeping for 6-8 hours. They're not moving. I think it's just that tendon needs that time frame of like, this is your period to be active, and then this is your period to not be active. And I think it needs that yin and yang. I think that's what it needs. And I don't think actually that it needs much. The tendon, I don't think it needs much. If you go back to the Achilles when you're walking, like the yin of the active phase for your Achilles, you go for a walk. The yang of the not active phase is you're laying in bed watching TV and then you go to bed. It's like, I don't think it needs much pull to get that signal. The thing is, when we're talking about athletes, like people that want to jump high and sprint fast and stuff like that, walking or just doing a little bit of pull, I don't think that's going to be enough. And then it makes me think of the pockets of degeneration within the tendon. If you just go for a walk and you have a big pocket of degeneration, the walking is not going to hit that area of degeneration. So that's where I think you need to get on the loading, because if you do the heavy isos, you can actually, like in theory, get load through that pocket of degeneration. So there's many things many things going through my head of like what I think based on those daily processes is like, I think a healthy person, that's kind of where I just put people, is like, you're a healthy person, you've never had tendon pain. We don't know enough to worry. Just do common sense, good training, make sure you get recovery. Someone starts to get tendon pain. Okay, let's start to dig deep on all these things and try to just check off all those boxes of, everything we possibly can. But I don't like to worry people. You never had tendon pain. You've never had any issues with your tendon. Just use common sense. Let's not even dig into the science, because you shouldn't care in the first place.
Have you, in your experience, noticed the difference, sticking with nutrition, people that eat a ton of meat or people that don't eat meat? Like, does it matter from anything that you found anecdotally or in the research?
No, I've never looked into like vegetarian, vegan, and tendon health. And even if like I have my hypertrophy cluster program, if someone's going to be vegan on that, nah, don't even do it. Like I'm not interested. I'm not interested. I don't think you're going to get that good of results. And I think for tendons is like, if you have a tendon pain, your muscle, if you have a chronic tendon pain, if it's, your muscle is probably going to be downregulated, degenerate, or not degenerative, but like smaller, weaker. You want to get that muscle up to par. Like, eating muscle meat is a great way to do that. And it's hard to do if you're going to be vegan, vegetarian. You can probably do it, but it's like, why make things difficult on yourself? Now, if you're doing it for those reasons, people have reasons to do it. So like, then you'd work with them. But if you're doing it because you watched the Game Changer documentary and you think it's healthy, like, come on.
Are you sick of talking about this stuff? Because you said it, you're interested in it, or you get to nerd out on it. But like, are you at the point where you're like, why aren't more people agreeing with me? Or are you still like, for lack of a better term, still love carrying this flag?
Agreeing, meaning they disagree with me on what?
Like, how, like, are you like, man, come on, people. I've said, like, the person that you talked about on X today, like, listen, I've provided so much.
Yeah.
Like, how can
No. The thing is, you never know the person, and then it's like, as you get more followers, you just get low quality people that are like, that it's like, yeah, I just kind of ignore it. I don't think that on Twitter it's too bad. I think Twitter is really beneficial for me, because there's so many researchers on there that
there
I can
are
just
a lot of researchers on X.
Yeah, it's really beneficial for me. I think Instagram is something where I learn, like, I hardly ever learn anything on Instagram. It's just low IQ people, and you can't even have good conversations. Not that I'm even care to do that, but you can't you can't see. So it's really just a quick hitter thing versus like Twitter. Like recently I found a tendon cell biologist, which like this lady is like crazy about tendon cells, which I'm like, this is fascinating. So I go on her page and I go on her page, and I can, on my phone, I can search on her actual page. I just type in what I want to find. So I type in tenocytes, or I type in tenoblast, or I type in what, and I can just see what she's covered over the years, and like really beneficial for me. But yeah, I don't get that too much like through Instagram, whatever. And I don't necessarily care too much if I have like naysayers or people that kind of question what I'm saying. So I'm like, I've built up to have thousands of people that have got results through me. Like I kind of have my echo chamber, and it's good for me. I think we all need validation. It's taken me many years to get to this point where I have people willing to listen to me. Because when you first started anything, it's like, who is this dude? And the longer you stick around, like, assuming you got your head on straight, you start to build that echo chamber. And I'm like, I got my people that are about what I'm about. And if someone disagrees, it's like, because, man, the people, part of it's probably too is the people that I've talked to on podcasts, or kind of just had conversations with, who are like this tendon cell biologist. She is worlds above me. She would never come on one of my posts about tendon cells and start disagreeing and starting beef, whatever. She just wouldn't do that. And this is a person who's like, their whole life is on tendon cells. So I'm like, the type of people who are really crazy knowledgeable about something, they never go and do those things. You never really have much to learn from them. And yeah, for me, I'm just trying to keep my sanity, keep my own entertainment. And it's just me digging into different things. I can't ever really explain my philosophy. I try to explain my philosophy as concise as I possibly can. But whatever. People are going to have opinions, and
Yeah, I guess
they're
I meant
yeah.
like, are you sick of talking about it with other strength coaches? You know, things like